But I'm going to focus on the ones that I know about that are fairly dominant and mainstream. To give you an idea of what the issue about death is, or the issues about death that arise from our culture, because Bradbury makes the good point that, and the way I say this is, death is always trope, or always twisted. It's always a linguistic, conceptual, social category. It doesn't have some given meaning that we all discover somehow instinctively. Death always occurs in a world, in a particular context of history and culture, among customs, etc. So it's never just there as a kind of unspecified or unprocessed fact. Death always already appears in a sense you call it reflected, interpreted, represented, as part of a system of representations or values. And one of Bradbury's commitments, we think is very important, is that death is normative. Have you ever wondered about the upper limit of the size of water that should be carried through a glass? With a 5-gallon thing? It's always a matter of interpretation. There's always some sort of contextual definition. Death is never pure or free. So we're going to go back to the Greeks, the Romans, and the Hebrews to give you an idea of the ideas that you have taken on about death. Because one of Bradbury's other points is much of what we think and feel about issues and values are things that come to us in our culture about which we have not reflected and sometimes can't reflect. We're in the funny position of having a kind of double relationship to a lot of values. In the sense that, let me understand. For example, I was raised Irish Catholic intensely in the 1950s in New York. It wasn't a matter of belief, it was kind of the air you breathe. Your genetic inheritance, there was nothing else. I knew there were Jews, but I had zero curiosity about what they believed. They were fine, they were great, they made good food, great. Their theology, who cared? I had no anti-Semitic bone in my body. Nobody, my grandmother worked at a Jewish restaurant, and was always great food, they were cool people. But no idea, I had no notion. Never occurred to me. And killing Christ, it didn't compute, none of that stuff. I didn't know what Protestants were. I knew there were weird churches in my neighborhood like Lutherans, but I didn't know what they did in there. And I didn't really know any Protestants. I knew a couple of people I think were Protestants. But again, I was completely incurious about what they believed. No interest. Right? I thought there were two kinds of people, Catholics and publics, because that's the kind of schools they were. They were shaped by who you are. Is very powerful in the way you can think and not think. And I could not literally think any other way, because that's the world and the air I breathed. Two shocking examples of how this worked. I was not a stupid kid. I was pretty sophisticated, self-reflective kid, but two things struck me. In 1954, when Martin Luther King did the bus thing in Montgomery, Alabama, I was absolutely shocked. I had no idea there was anything like segregation or race prejudice, or even though I lived in a completely racist town that was proud of the fact there were no black people there. It just hadn't occurred to me that this was an issue. It just never came up in my life to think about it. And ever since, I've never been able to take it seriously, because it just wasn't part of my universe. Okay? Never thought about it. Absolute shock. Right? And everybody in here has things like that, but they just don't know how to think about it otherwise. The second one, this is a lot weirder. This is pretty stupid. I must have been 15 when the Sputnik first rocket with a guy in it. Now, I've been watching Flash Gordon serials on TV in the Saturday matinees with kids for years. And there was the Flash used to go all over the universe very easily. Visit the planet Mongo with all these great people living on the Earth. I just assumed, this is really stupid, that the space travel was kind of a given, that we've been doing this for a long time. It just never occurred to me. So ever since then, I can't get impressed by space stuff, by moon stuff. Who cares? We've been to the planet Mongo. What difference am I home? Again, I lived in a world where that just, and where the boundaries of reality are very arbitrary. And again, I was a smart kid. I did really well in school. I was very sophisticated, reflective. I was reading good literature. And yet I'm shocked at the age of 15 or 16 by this space thing. Makes no sense, but it was real. Okay, so we have beliefs that shape us profoundly that are not conscious, that are shocks, and there's a shock when they're overturned or challenged. And in a way, I've never gotten over either one. I don't really believe in racial prejudice or homophobia. I just don't get it. I can't imagine how anybody would have the energy to take the time to give a crap about that stuff. I'm not particularly tolerant, but I'm just, it takes time to do that. Right? Why would I worry about a gay person? I mean, who cares? I'm not going to make a sign and go out and walk or do something hateful. I just don't have to, I got things to do. So that's one thing I'll never get over. And again, the space shuttle, I don't care. They can go anywhere. It's irrelevant. Anyway, so you're shaped by beliefs that are very powerful. And I want you guys to think about those things in your own life. The same thing with dying, death. When we talk about death, we're shaped by certain kind of beliefs. As I say, I'm raised Catholic, never had a crisis of faith. Didn't trust the priest ever, because that was not part of our faith. Only my family trusted the priests. I see my faith status. I have no idea what my parents believed. We had to go to church, went to Catholic school. I have no notion if they believed in God. I think my mother was a total skeptic. She always had something to do when church came around. She sent us, but she almost never went. I think my father believed, but I never, for 2 seconds of my life, ever discussed it with him. Right? But it was just something you did. It wasn't something you had to talk about. Sex. Right? So it was the environment in which I lived. I got bored with it. That's what happened. I didn't start not believing. I just got sick of going to church. And it got really predictable and dull, and I didn't want to hear it. So I stopped doing it. And I think a lot of things having to do with belief fall into that category rather than something like crisis, where you really think it through and you make rational decisions. I just got bored going. I go back now twice a year. I tell this to every one of my classes. Because I love going to Mass. It's really, Catholics do ceremony better than any other white people. Christian or Jews are bad, not good ceremony. The Catholics have the theater part down. They're good. I like going back and see it now. And I believe it when I'm in the church. I go inside the building, I'm more like, I'm a Catholic, I'm back, I love the eclecticism, I love the kind of cross, the interracial and every kind of persons in that church. It's great. So for the hour I can give that twice a year on average. I get bored at the same point too. It's kind of predictable, that frustration. And then I leave the building and I don't believe it. I don't even believe that. It's crazy. But for the moment, in there, performing it, enacting my belief, I believe it. Okay? And I think that is another important thing we don't notice about people. When you're in the environment of practice, doing the things that you did as a kid or doing the things that are important to your family or your tradition, you're a part of that. When I die, I'm getting a priest. I'm going to have the embarrassing Irish funeral with the open casket, make people look at my dead body. When I first came to California and went to a memorial service, what the hell is that about? There's no body. Irish people love looking at that body for days on end. I just didn't understand this whole idea of being discreet about dead people. Corpses are meant to be shown. And so you have traditions and rituals in which you believe shape you, of which you may not now be conscious.